Twain once said that when there's a gold rush, it's a good time to be in the pick and shovel business. Today we look at the rapidly evolving markets in the marijuana green rush in our Cannabis Chronicles. Welcome back, everyone. Half past the hour, and joining us today, we've got Dan Barton from splashandashfordogs.com. Dan, welcome to the show. Hello, Dan. Are you there? All right. Trying to get Dan to answer on the line here. We'll try give him a call back here, see if we can get a response. Splashandashfordogs.com. And of course, we're also going to ask Dan a few questions about marijuana and your dog. There are many folks that are interested now in using medical cannabis in a veterinarian sense to be able to help their aging animals or their injured animals. And many people have questions about that. Dan, do we have you on the line?
I'm here.
Hi, Dan Barton from splashandashfordogs.com. Thanks for joining us on the show.
No problem.
All right. So wanted to start off by asking you about that website and your product, Splash and Dash for Dogs. What is this?
Well, we are a groomery and boutique for everything dogs. So, we have grooming services. We have a lot of retail products. We specialize in high-end dog food and unique retail products or various products for dogs.
Oh, excellent.
So we have several stores throughout the country. The one thing that makes us uniquely different is we have a membership bath program for dogs. So a pet parent can bring their dog in an unlimited number of times throughout the month, and we'll, keep the dog clean for you.
Oh,
that's what really makes us unique.
Well, that's awesome. And located in some of the legal states or medical states at this point?
We're not yet, no.
Okay, which state?
But, it's changing all the time, so, it's just a matter of time before we're in a legal state.
Okay, but people can find all your locations at splashandashfordogs.com?
That's correct, and we also offer franchise opportunities. So if somebody, is looking to get into the pet industry, then we offer a franchise model as well. And all of that's on the website as well.
Oh, excellent. Okay, Dan. Well, what I wanted to talk a little bit about today is, we've got more and more states legalizing marijuana. We're up to 4 now. We got 23 medical marijuana states. And this, of course, opens up the opportunity for pet parents to be possibly concerned about their dog either being exposed to smoke, vapor, edibles, or possibly even on purpose using cannabis as a medicine for their dog. What kind of recommendations can you give us when it comes to dogs and cannabis?
Well, I think the first thing that is important to understand is very new. It's in its infancy stages of whether or not there are true scientific benefits for a dog using it. At this point in time, there's a lot of vets that through, their own individual practices have heard great stories or great success stories of pet parents using it, but we're not at the point where we have scientific proof. So it's very similar to if you think back many years ago when, before states started becoming legal, where there were all of our friends and family members who we personally experienced where when they used marijuana, it was very helpful in relieving pain. And so the pet industry is kind of at that stage still. So we have a lot of pet parents that, have given their dogs marijuana, and typically the cases have been where the dog has terminal cancer, the dog's in pain, and they've given the dog marijuana to help, relieve that pain and make them comfortable in their last few days or last few months of life. And that's been primarily the use up until this point. But now that, it's everywhere in the media, we've got more and more states coming on board, we're beginning to see more and more use of it in that type of application.
Excellent. All right. So what are some of the do's and don'ts? What should you not do when it comes to marijuana in your dog?
Well, I think it's, you shouldn't be blowing smoke directly into the dog or a cat's face. The way that they, if you were going to give your pet some marijuana, then you would do it through the food source, and they would ingest it and take in the benefits that way. So blowing smoke is not good. And, you want to be careful when you do mix it in their food that you want to mix it in their food that is safe for them. So, dog food or canned dog food is fine. You want to be careful of mixing it into a human ingredient and then giving it to them. Some dogs, chocolate is very toxic to dogs. There's different vegetables that are toxic to dogs. So you're safer if you are going to use it and give it to them in either dry food or with their dog food so that it's not mixed with other ingredients that they can't have.
Right. I understand there's a lot of different foods that we should be aware of that are not good for dogs, things like onions, for example. Do you have any list of those sort of things for us?
Well, those items that, and we have your typical food items that dogs should not have. I think what's important, though, is, when we have pot in our house and we begin to cook with it, maybe we make some brownies, or we're adding it into butter, or we're adding it into, some oils. It's important that those types of items that we may think is not a big deal, like mixing in with brownies, that we don't give brownies to the dog, or we don't give the infused butter to the dog. And that's where the real danger is. Giving it in their own particular dog food, no problem, because the core food there is not a problem for them to adjust.
Now, as far as a dog accidentally getting into your stash or into your edibles, what are some of the effects people could look for to maybe diagnose that this might have happened?
Well, one of the big things is looking at their pupils. So they would have, dilated pupils. So that's very easy to notice. They're also going to be very lethargic. And there's possibility of seizures. And, and that's something that, certainly if seizures start, then you need to rush to the emergency room right away. But the dilated pupils, being lethargic, those are the more common things that you would see, as signs.
Gotcha. Now, as everyone knows and is fond of saying in the marijuana movement, nobody's ever died of a marijuana overdose. At least a human hasn't. Is it possible for a dog to die from a marijuana overdose?
Well, again, like I said in the very beginning, when we're still at the infancy stages of this, I have not personally heard of any cases where a dog has overdosed. But again, because we're still in the beginning stages of this, it is very possible, I think, that you potentially could. If they get too much, again, you think about our body size versus a dog. Most dogs, the average dog that most humans have, is typically between 10 and 21 pounds. And so if they got into your stash on accident, they may not die from the an actual overdose, but the seizures may, cause other problems, and then ultimately they could potentially die from one of the side effects, maybe not necessarily the overdosing. But, I think that everybody would agree the best practice here is to, make sure your stuff is safely secured, and whether it's a dog or small kids in the house, you want to make sure that it's secure for both of them, so that accidents, like that don't happen.
Right. Now, what are the characteristics of these seizures? Are we talking about a dog like, trembling, falling over, drooling? I mean, I've got some folks in the chat room that are a little doubtful of this. They say they've used cannabis with their pets and haven't seen anything even close to a seizure. I mean, what's this like?
Well, everything that you said are all possible signs, right? Each dog is different, just like each person is different. We all react slightly different to the different amounts that we take, and so your pet is going to be the same. And unfortunately, at this point, we don't have the scientific study, to be able to say exactly, what to look for. But those are the common things that when you talk to vets that have had patients come in, that's what they say they see or hear from a pet using too much.
Yeah, we had my wife and I had a skipper key dog for a while, and it was an older dog, maybe 15 or 16 at the time. not a big dog, maybe 12, 13 pounds, and got into some marijuana brownies and did exhibit those kind of seizure. He was drooling, his eyes were dilated, he was shaking really badly. We couldn't discern, though, whether it was from the chocolate or if it was from the cannabis.
Right. Right. Yeah, and that's exactly, when we were talking earlier about ingesting, and, it's not so much the marijuana, but sometimes it's the combination of the marijuana and the chocolate brownies or the other food item that it's being mixed with.
Yeah.
And so in hindsight, it's very possible that your dog would not have experienced any of that had they ingested the marijuana through, some wet food or dry food.
Yeah, and it's kind of thing now where we're just kind of shooting in the dark because it's not like they've done double-blind studies on this kind of stuff. We're just, going off of people's anecdotes. And if someone says they see their dog seizing, well, maybe it's the pot, but maybe it's what the pot was in. It's hard to tell at this point.
Right, and that's why, if you feel that you want to give your dog some, then, doing it in a controlled environment. So a controlled environment would be if you have always fed your dog XYZ canned food, right? And the dog eats the food and has normal bowel movements, acts normal afterwards, and that has happened over several months, then there's no type of allergic or any other type of issues with that canned food. So that would be a great food to mix the marijuana with. Now add the marijuana in different doses and watch what happens. And so now if you mix it in and the dog's stumbling over or lethargic or dilated pupils, vomiting, seizures, whatever, then at least it is directly related to the marijuana and more than likely the overall amount that you mixed in.
Well, it's always good advice to keep your stash locked up, whether there's kids or pets around. And I can't disagree with not blowing smoke in an animal's face. They don't really have much say in something like that. And I'm against drugging any being without its consent. So Dan Barton from splashandashfordogs.com. Thanks for joining us here on the Russ Belville Show and offering a little perspective.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
All right. When we come back, we'll have time for a little bit of a radical rant. Body cameras. Everybody's calling for body cameras with respect to these cops, but we've got some data that show that it may not do any good. Stay tuned for that right after our anti-drug public service announcement of the day.
You're tuned into the Russ Belville Show, the voice of the marijuana nation.